Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. Welcome to Fireside Chat number
182.
182. Wow. 18 to 200. You know, when we began, it was like an experiment. Give it a try, see what happens. And that, by the way, is a great lesson in life. Gotta give a lot of things a try. And most things you try won't succeed. To which the answer is, so what? I'm not going to talk about so what now, but I want you to know so what are two of the greatest words you can use about things that happen to you. Not truly important. I mean, there are times when you can't say that, but most of the time, so what? That's what you have to say. Otherwise, you go nuts. Anyway, I'm Dennis Prager, and this is my time to reflect on life with you. Do you know that I got a handwritten letter from an 8-year-old girl? Jane, was it? Mm-hmm. And if you're watching, I already hand wrote you a response, which is not to say that I do that all the time, so I don't want people to be hurt if I don't get a chance, but I was very touched. She's 8 years old. She's in Utah. And said specifically in the note that this is what she loves, the Fireside Chat. And I was talking to Megan, now known as Megan the Great. That is how she is known around the Fireside Chat, about our gigantic staff here. And I was telling her, how is it that an 8-year-old enjoys the Fireside Chat? So even though I wasn't going to talk about this, it's worth talking about because I would like to help people communicate better. Why would an 8-year-old watch each week stuff that's pretty deep? I don't talk about light stuff. I mean, I try to be lighthearted. I'm lighthearted about heavy stuff. That's one way of describing my life. But you wouldn't expect an 8-year-old to watch this. So it's a credit to her and it's a credit to me. It's 50-50. So the credit to her is obvious. So what is the credit to me? I realized at a very young age, I began lecturing at 21, and I was giving a lecture at a synagogue sometime in my mid-20s. And there were kids at services. It was a Sabbath service, and I was the guest speaker for the weekend at the synagogue. And I noticed in the middle of the talk, I actually noticed it while I was talking, that the kids were listening. I mean, little kids were listening. They normally just leave. That's the rabbi gets up and they sort of get out. and you know, it happens with pastors and priests. It's just normal. 8-year-olds don't tend to listen to sermons or talks. But they did. And I have always asked myself about me. I always have looked at myself from outside myself. It's a very good way of trying to understand how you come across. Try to see yourself from outside yourself. Anyway, I said, wow, they're listening. They're 8 years old and they're listening. And then I reflected on it and I realized why. 2 things kept them listening, even at 8. One is I'm clear. Whether you agree with everything I say or not is not the point. But I'm very clear. Clarity is everything to me. It's in terms of when I read. If the author is not clear, I just move on and don't even read it a third time. I might read the paragraph a second time. Maybe I miss something. I want clarity. By the way, in my own works, that's where all my work comes in. Not in the first writing, in making it clear in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth writing. That's why my Rational Bible is currently the most widely read Bible commentary in America. I am very clear, and I'm making biblical texts clear, which are not clear. Clarity is everything. And on my radio show, I have a motto: clarity over agreement. And so when people call up who differ with me, I very rarely argue with them, and certainly rarely yell at them. What I do is establish where we differ, so that it's clear to that person, clear to me, and clear to the listeners where we differ. By the way, I believe that couples should do that. Instead of arguing, why don't you first try to establish clearly where you differ? First, you might find you don't really differ that much. That often happens. I have often had quote-unquote arguments with listeners. Then I clarify where we differ, and it's much less than the caller thought it when they called in. And that's maybe true with regard to a couple as well. So number one is clarity, and number two is interesting. I think I've talked about being interesting. That is the essence of all communication, whether it's music or art or speeches or books. You must be interesting. That doesn't mean superficial. It doesn't mean, well, I was going to say non-deep. That's what superficial means. It doesn't mean being superficial. You can be superficial and boring, believe me. In fact, I find the superficial boring, ipso facto, inherently so. If you're interesting and clear, 8-year-olds will listen to you. That's the point. Why wouldn't they? Now, will they understand every single point? Of course not. But it doesn't matter. They wait for the next point that they will understand. There is nothing I said till now that an 8-year-old wouldn't understand. But so I'm addressing all ages when I talk, consciously or not. Okay, so I just thought I would reflect on that. The importance of both the clarity and the interest in when you speak. So if you are 8, welcome to the Fireside Chat. By the way, if you are 80, welcome to the Fireside Chat. One word about old people. I began lecturing in my 20s, which is a very odd life, because who has an audience when they're 21? I did. It's because I had just come back from the Soviet Union, and I was lecturing on the Soviet Union, and very few people had visited it, could speak, and knew Russian. And anyway, I had a big advantage. I had a fascinating subject. Nobody knew who I was, but the subject interested them. How you doing, Otto? By the way, this is Otto. Otto sends his love to all of you. He's very appreciative of the fans that he has made around the world.
Snoopy is...
Is that Snoopy now making noises?
Yeah.
I didn't even know Snoopy was in here. Now, Snoopy does not find me that interesting. It's clear he will probably now leave the room, but it's unfortunate you folks can't see that. But let's see if you could hear his pitter-patter. Those are Snoopy's 4 legs. The door will now be opened. He is wagging his tail, which is his way of saying, I would like to get the hell out of here. I understand that. Bye, Snoop. All right, Snoop is a basset hound. The reason we have a basset hound and an English bulldog is that they are, in our view, that is my wife and my view, the funniest 2 breeds of dogs. And why would I not want to laugh regularly if I could, right? And that they both cause that. All right, that was hopefully helpful. Shall we go to the questions now? Okay, great. So the whole topic that I had wanted to talk to you about, I didn't even mention. Are you curious? I'll bet you're curious. How can I mention that and not say what, right? It's not right. So the topic I was going to address, see, whenever I could do a non-political topic, I try, but politics is very intrusive in life. Anyway, some of the questions are about the world situation and America, and that will allow me to. But the topic was, everyone is a composite. And that means nothing right now, but I will explain it in another Fireside Chat, and it will help you a lot. Because you are, and I am as well. Not just everyone in your life, but you too. Okay, here we go. Take it away, video questioner.
My name is Julia. I'm 19 and I'm from Riverside, California. My question is, what are your thoughts on globalism / a one world government? I know that the culture and our leaders are really pushing for globalism. So what are your thoughts on that? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Thank you.
Thank you. I love the fact that she had a big little laugh at the end. That's sweet. Well, Julia and all the rest of you, America was the only country founded on the belief that government should be small. That is a distinctive American belief. It is one of the core beliefs that made America uniquely successful, uniquely free, uniquely opportunity giving to so many people from so many backgrounds. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. It is one of my mottos of life. The reason that the founders of the United States feared big government is they know and knew human nature, and human nature is not good. There is goodness in human nature, but human nature is not basically good. Therefore, why would you give a lot of power to a creature that is not essentially that good? Isn't that obvious? Yes, it is obvious. We live in the age of the denial of the obvious. Men do not give birth, but that is denied. That is not a statement of hate, what I just said. It is a statement of the obvious. This is the age of the denial of the obvious in every area of life. So this is obvious. You don't want people to have a lot of power over other people. They will misuse it. Power corrupts. A major British official in the 19th century, I think it was Lord Acton, said power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You don't want to give a handful of people power over a lot of people. You know who's powerful? This comes from the Talmud. Nearly 1,800 years ago, an aphorism I was raised with in yeshiva, in Jewish religious school in Hebrew, and it is in English. Who is the powerful man? The one who conquers his own nature. That's powerful. If you can control you, you're powerful. If you can control me, you're an autocrat. You're a dictator. You're a tyrant. Work on controlling you, not me. I don't want you to control me. I want to control me. I want God to be the being I am answerable to, not you, nor you to me. By the way, that is the reason the left always, in every country, in every society, wherever there are elections, not every society has free elections, almost always wins, because they say, give us more power, we'll give you more goodies. And conservatives say, we want less power, which means we'll give you fewer goodies. So people vote for people who have more power because they'll get more goodies. I don't know who said it, but it was said hundreds of years ago, that the moment that people understand that they could vote for people who will then give them money or goods or services, it's the end ultimately of a functioning democracy. People will vote more and more for more and more people who promise them benefits if they vote for them. I don't want anything from the government except security. That's it. That's all I want. I want to be able to fail on my own, and I want to be able to succeed on my own. So, Julia, the human tendency towards one government is the scariest possible development. I don't want the UN to run the world. I don't want the International Court of Justice to overrule the US Supreme Court. I don't want any consolidated power. I want the states to have power in America. That's why the founders gave the states so much power, because they didn't want the federal government to have so much power. The Democratic Party, which is the party of the left, used to be the party of liberals, is now the party of the left, wants more and more and more power. And all it does is breed more and more corruption and less freedom. Google has a tremendous amount of power, and Amazon has a tremendous amount of power. That is not good, because they misuse it. That is inevitable. Power over you is liberating. You yourself, power over you, but not others having power over you. Thank you again, Julia. Elaine, 40 years old, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. How do you mend, they dropped you, but how do you mend a broken heart, also a broken soul, if the environment is not supportive enough? Now, I take a look at these questions right before I do the fireside chat. So it's very spontaneous, but I did see them. So I debated whether to take this one because I need to know what you're referring to, what you're referring to with the environment not being supportive, and what broke your soul and what broke your heart. There is no human being who has not had a broken heart unless they died in their sleep at 12. But you have a broken heart before 12. Life consists of broken hearts, a series of broken hearts. So that is why you need to develop strong, I'm using Dr. Stephen Marmer's term, professor of psychiatry at UCLA Medical School. And on my radio show on the Happiness Hour, he was a guest once. He was a guest a number of times, but he once said to me, I became the topic for a moment, and he said, he knows me very well. We know each other 30 years. And he said, you have really strong shock absorbers. And he is right. I do. I worked very hard on developing them. Shock absorbers, it's an interesting question. Are we born with shock absorbers? I think we are, but they're not very strong. You have to strengthen them. My book on happiness talks about that, about many ways to deal with life so that the shock absorbers are not overwhelmed. But of course, there are things that can happen in your life that can overwhelm you, obviously. And the question is, how do you deal with that? I know so many people who lost a child, and that's sort of everybody who has a child. Every parent's nightmare is that their child will die before they do. I mean, everybody's child dies ultimately. But as my mom used to say all the time, parents are supposed to die first. It was a very simple and correct line. And yet, among those I know who've lost a child, the pain never leaves, the hole is never filled, but some have better shock absorbers than others. Of that, there is no question. By the way, you have to work on your shock absorbers before the shocks. Most people work on their shock absorbers after the shock. It's okay, but it's not nearly as helpful as working on them beforehand. Nathan, 21, New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm glad to say that I recently joined Prager Force. Congratulations. I was just telling my wife and Megan that if I were your age, that's exactly what I would do, is join Prager Force. My question is for you is this: what are some ways to increase the formation of stable marriages in the United States? Okay. So of the 10 methods, here is the first 9. Get married. Can't have a stable marriage if you don't get married. Now, why do so many young Americans not get married? That's where I've talked about that, right? So what number was that? 89, 106, 144. I'm just making up numbers, but I know I've talked about it. One of the reasons is fear. It's just fear. People are afraid to get married. I was with, I don't remember. I think it was in Florida last week. And I was talking to a guy who's 35, and he's been dating a woman, if that's the term you folks use at 35. Do you still use dating? Seeing, going with a woman for 4 years. I goes, you're 35. Why don't you get married? He goes, because I'm not ready yet. Now, there's a great answer to that. You're never ready. Who's ready to get married? It doesn't exist. You get married because you want to grow up. That's why you get married. Now, am I saying that single people don't grow up? By and large, that's what I'm saying, yes. Doesn't mean a single person can't be a beautiful human being, a wonderful human being, a giving human being, a contributing human being, a wonderful scientist, a terrific pilot, a wonderful lawyer, a wonderful writer. It could be a million things. But in certain areas, you don't grow up. Ask anyone who is married. Did marriage mature you? Even if the marriage was lousy. It cracks me up. I'm not ready. Who's ready? What do you wake up one day? I'm ready to get married. Doesn't happen. So the first thing in answering a question is, you can't have stable marriages if you don't have marriages. Now, as to stable marriages, I ought to talk about that. Tips on marriage. I've been divorced, so people say, oh, this cracks me up. Because I get attacked a lot, just in case you didn't know. There's a lot of venom that comes my way if you look on the internet, and it is what it is. And one of them is, oh, Prager, he has this male-female hour on the radio, and he's been divorced. And I'm thinking, doesn't that make my advice even better? So I'll ask you a very simple question. You're married and you have some marital issues and you want to go to a marital therapist. I have 2 therapists for you to choose from. One has been happily married for 30 years. The other one was divorced and is now happily married. Which one would you go to? You would all go to number 2, every one of you. Because they knew what difficult marriages were about. Anyway, I'll give you thoughts on marriage another time, but the first thing you got to do is get married. Lauren, 17, what's our time frame?
24.
Good. Lauren, 17, Whitby, Canada. Where's Whitby? She should have said the province. I know my Canada. I could name the 10 provinces. How do you like that? You know how many Americans know there are 10 provinces? 4.
It's impressive.
By the way, I've been to 9 of them. I have not been to Prince Edward Island, which is really, really small. There were more people who lived in a few blocks of my house in Brooklyn than live on Prince Edward Island. All right, here we go. Oh, and Prager Force, a Canadian Prager Force. Hi, Dennis and Otto. This is addressed to you, Mr. Rowe. Yeah. Okay. The left presents the doctrine of equity as a virtue. They make the case that any inequalities of outcome must be regarded as unjust. You got this very clearly, which is, talk about clarity. That is a very clear explanation of equity. And as proof that there's constant patriarchal Western oppression. We've now replaced the term, We've now replaced the term equality with equity. What are your thoughts on this? Thank you and best wishes. Lauren, you're impressive. That's great. Yes, they have replaced equality with equity, just as they have replaced justice with social justice. Social justice has as much to do with justice as, I got to think of an analogy, as tulips have to do with asparagus. How's that? It's wild. That was really wild. What kind of brain comes up with something like that? I have no answer to that. Sometimes I look at my brain and go, where did you come from? In any event, they do that all the time with words. That is correct. It's like gender instead of sex, climate change instead of global warming. The left, like Orwell, manipulates language. Things mean different things. Equity has nothing to do with equality. Equity is equal outcome. And equal outcome must mean tyranny. The only way to have equal outcomes is to prohibit freedom. The moment there is freedom, you will have unequal outcomes. Baseball players will make more than teachers or doctors. Right? How do you stop that? By declaring you cannot make more than a doctor or a teacher. Then you have equity. But if there's freedom, people are going to spend more money to watch baseball than they will to fund a doctor. It's just the way it is. Is that right? What does it mean? Yes, it is right. Because it's freedom. Freedom is a great value. That's why it's right. So if you want real equity, not only will you have tyranny, you will have utter and total chaos, because you will declare, as the Oregon Education Department has, yes, that there is no one right answer in math. Now, why did they say that? Because that means the kids who get wrong answers in math get the same grade as the kids who get right answers. Then you have equity. Nobody did better on an exam, right? Equity is foundational to the destruction of civilization as we know it, which is built on standards, not on equity. Equality of opportunity, equality before the law, that's different. That, of course, all men are created equal. It's in the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Let me hear Otto for a moment. Let us revel in Otto. One more, Otto. Thank you. Okay. I find his snoring very relaxing as it happens. Otto, everything is good, isn't it? Yes. Otto's motto is, so what? That I have to say. Okay. All right. That was important too. What's our time?
29.
So should I do one more or not?
Depends on what that
This
is.
is that's a good answer. It depends on the question. It's like in Israel, I'll never forget. I always rent a car wherever I go in the world. I rented a car. I was at a gas station. And I said, so how long will it take me to get to Tel Aviv? And the guy said, well, it depends on how fast you're driving. I have never asked again, how long will it take me to get somewhere? I hear that guy's voice in my brain. That was your answer now. Well, do I have the time? It depends how long your answer is.
And now you don't.
And now I don't. But I thought I would end with a very good anecdote. The guy was totally right. How long is it from here to Tel Aviv? How fast are you driving, sir? That was cute. All right. maybe I convinced some of you not to wait till you're ready and just become a grown-up and get married. When I was a kid, being a grown-up was an ideal. Basically, what do you want to be when you grow up? A grown-up. That's what you should want to be when you grow up. Okay, Dennis Prager here. Great to be with you. See you next week. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.